Hey everybody, welcome to Money Mastery Series. Today we're going to talk about the power of your prosperity vehicle. And you can call it prosperity vehicle, you can call it a vehicle, you can call it a creation vehicle, or you can think of it any way you want to think about it. So in the world of manifestation, which I like to refer to as creation. So in the world of creation, one concept that is often overlooked but is critically important is the prosperity path or the prosperity vehicle. While creation is deeply rooted in spiritual and energetic principles, we live in a manifest physical world, and as such, we must pull from the unseen to the seen. And so that means to bring our desires into reality, we must often use a bridge between the spiritual and the physical realms. And that bridge is what we're calling a vehicle here today. And the vehicle drives, as I like to say it drives on the bridge of incidents, which are those synchronicities and those happenstances that happen through putting yourself out there and working through energetic movement, right? So now, contrary to some teachings, it's not always enough to simply state your desires and let the universe handle the how. And without a doubt, I'm sure you've often and will still often hear me say, fuck the how, because I totally agree that sometimes it is just fuck the how. Um, the universe does play a role. However, it also absolutely rewards effort and risk. And for many, the subconscious mind finds it easier and more logical to work through a defined method or path. And your vehicle sort of serves as this placebo, for lack of a better word. And at first, it can be hard to grasp the idea of creating something from nothing. And again, this is why it helps to have this vehicle. And sometimes your vehicle will even turn into the stepping stone that gives you the confidence and the skills to actually create from what may seem like nothing. Now, often the process of gathering momentum starts slow, and you may find that there are initial obstacles, initiations, tests, blocks, those sort of things that you will need to overcome to get to a place of solid movement and momentum. And this is where other tools come into play, like breath work, journaling, inner child work, and the myriad of other tools that are offered in this community. And through aligning with your path, you will find clarity. And clarity is super important. And this guide today will teach you what the prosperity vehicle is, why it matters, how to choose the right one, and how to avoid resistance to receiving abundance. A vehicle here is the method or path that carries you from point A, your current situation, to point B, which is your desired outcome. It bridges the gap between your desire and your reality. Well, creation begins in what can be referred to as the ethereal or the 5D realm, your thoughts, emotions, energy. Results actually show up in the 3D realm, which is the physical world around us. Therefore, to translate spiritual ideas into material form, we need tools that bridge the laws of our physical world and the quantum world that surrounds us, the energetic world. We need a medium of communication and energetic exchange. That is your vehicle. And something I should mention is that there is a law called the law of equivalent exchange. And some people say that this is a core universal law and that we cannot create something from nothing. Like we can't just sit and try to manifest and not take any action and bring something into being. And while for me personally, I disagree that you can't bring something into space, into the physical realm out of nothing. But I think there's more to it than that, and I'm not going to get into that today. So anyway, so some people think that this is a core universal law, the law of equivalent exchange, that you can't create something from nothing. There must be an equivalent exchange. And so, what this means is that to receive something like money, success, love, we must offer something in return. And this could be time, energy, intention, or action, or something else. Now, I think it's really important that we pay attention to this because this is where you could be creating a sort of contract with yourself when you take into consideration this law of equivalent exchange. So be careful not to create contracts with yourself, your higher conscious, or the universe, because like taking this law too seriously could literally lead to limited thinking and actual limited beliefs, right? So, for example, you have the belief that you cannot get X without giving Y because you're saying, oh, I have to take into consideration the law of equivalent exchange. And so that means that I have to change this for this, and there has to be a trade off, right? So it's important to not get caught up in assigning value in what is equivalent, right? So, so what your value, right? Like intention could be as simple as stating your intention every day and writing it down, right? Um, there you are giving and you are pointing energy, right? And you're not assigning it value. And then time is another one. It could simply be time to journal or plan, like, or set up a calendar or daydreaming and visualizing with joy your new life. And so I want to go back to the idea of like, be careful here. Like, because your mind can get caught up in not only creating these contracts with this law of equivalent exchange. Like, you go to the church and you pray and you say, oh, I will be vegetarian for the rest of my life if you can just give me the winning to the lottery this week. And then you win the lottery and then you're trapped in this contract that you've created with yourself, right? So be careful about how you do create these sort of law of equivalent exchange ideas and beliefs in your mind, as well as if you do think of it as a contract, because I know a lot of people are kind of thinking of it that way. And I know that's something that could trip you up, and I don't want people to get tripped up. So be careful about how you create the contract with your mind and with the universe or your higher consciousness or whatever it is. And also be aware of assigning value for what you deem equivalent in exchange, right? So if you have low self-worth or esteem, you could be telling yourself that you don't deserve it because what you have to give is not enough, right? So don't fall into this trap. You are inherently worthy, and whatever you have to offer will always, always be acceptable to help create momentum and open the door for more and significant exchanges down the road in the future, right? So you can always start small. Don't get trapped into too much kind of assigning value of what you believe is valuable enough for an equivalent exchange in the universe, because the universe, the idea of value for the universe may not even have a value on it. And it may just need the symbolic exchange coming from you, putting forth the energy, setting the intention, and making the symbolic and ceremonial exchange of saying that I will give this in return, or I will do that in return, or quite simply, it is just enough to set the intention and push the energy in the direction. And of course, yes, expired action will always help to speed up the process. And energy spent, as long as it's aligned, is going to help make things go fast. So I like to think of this rather than a hard law. This is more of a tool, like a law that's a tool that gives your mind the capability, or it's almost like a placebo, to see and understand the thing coming into being rather than from nothing, through an energetic exchange or through an exchange placating the logical mind. So it's almost like a placebo pill, just using this law. Um, I sometimes think of this law as it would be a limiting belief. Like it could become a limiting a belief if you start to think, oh, I always have to give an equivalent exchange. So don't get too caught up in the ability to create something from nothing, because at the end of the day, energy is always omnipresent and it's everywhere around us. And so really we're just compressing it into physical form. And this is never actually nothing or something from nothing. There's always energy present, right? So it's you're always compressing it down into something. Um, so it's not technically something from nothing because there is already something that exists, and that's energy, and that's all around us. So just don't get stuck on believing that you have to make a massive donation or an exchange to receive what you want when you take into consideration this idea of using this law of energetic exchange. Again, energy is always omnipresent, it's everywhere around us. And just for one last example, um, if you are manifesting a romantic partner, like point A is being single, right? But point B is being in a relationship. And spiritual alignment alone may take a very long time physically to bring a person actually into your living room. If you're just sitting home and manifesting spiritually, it's probably going to take a long time before someone comes and knocks on your door for some random reason and shows up in your living room. And then it's totally possible, or it may not happen at all. But if you decide to use a vehicle, like you join a club or you go to social events, these sort of things serve as mediums to help facilitate what you want to create, arriving. And since we work in the physical, we must consider how energy moves and operates inside the 3D as well. There's a few misconceptions here in creation. Uh, Many believe that money or other desires can appear out of thin air, which is kind of what I was just talking about a little bit. While sudden windfalls can occur, consistent creation relies on aligned thoughts and beliefs, energetic readiness, and having an actionable or having actionable vehicles. Um, and so it gives you kind of two options. You have the long, possibly never route, which is I can just think about money and it will come eventually, and it may come eventually, or it may not. And that's why it's called the long, possibly never route. But the short route, you must align your subconscious beliefs, take inspired, aligned action, and your prosperity vehicle is a part of that action. So I'm going to give you some examples of prosperity vehicles here and how to think about it. The prosperity vehicle is where you set into motion your bridge of incidents and you are pre-paving, right? So you choose your prosperity vehicle wisely. So when you're when you're coming up with this idea for your prosperity vehicle, you want to think about, like, is it giving you joy? Is it going to make you feel good inside? And but not only that, but then you want to think about, you want to consider long-term situations like 5, 10, 15 years, but you also want to consider like 6 months, 1, 3 years, and really take all your limits off the table and ask yourself, if I could do anything I want, live however I want, what would it be? Right? So just take the situation and clear your mind and take off your limitations, take off the money, take off, like, if you could just do what you wanted in your life and make a living that way, and what would that be? And where would you live? And really think about it, and think about it in terms of like a short-term goals and long-term goals, because like a lot of times, like I can say specifically from experience, when you scale out your prosperity vehicle, you may find a lot of things that sound good at 6 months and a year from now, but they may not scale in a way that you expect when you start thinking like, where is this going to be in 5 years or 10 years even or more? So when you're thinking about your prosperity vehicle, you really want to like get clear on if it's something that you feel like for you that you can do for a very long period of time, or if you're just, okay, I see this for 6 months, 1, 2 years, and then I'm going to have to switch, or we're going to have to pivot into something else. And just get clear on the scale and the scope of what your prosperity vehicle could be. Here's just a few examples of what we're talking about with prosperity vehicles here. Exploring specific areas for money creation, right? Like job opportunities. Like job opportunities are a prosperity vehicle. Obviously, you get a job, then you earn money. That's how you can create prosperity. Apply for a new job or ask for a raise in your current one. And if they won't give you a raise, start looking for other jobs. And statistically speaking, people who switch jobs every 1 or 2 years are able to double or add 30 to 50% to their salaries on a regular basis each time they go from one job to another. So, you know, that's can be a prosperity vehicle through working one job and then another and then another and changing your job every every year, 18 months, 2 years, something like that, and always asking for raises. Starting a business, launch a product, a service, or a new business venture. You know, what pain point can you solve that maybe you already have solved for yourself that you can turn into a product or a service for other people? This is another example of a prosperity vehicle. Um, Maybe for school and or business, you're looking for funding opportunities. There's lots of actual grants, loans, and scholarships and things like that that are available in the library and online. And I went down a whole rabbit hole once with grants and loans and scholarships, and there's just lots of stuff out there, and people just you don't look. So you have to put yourself out there and look for them. That could be another prosperity vehicle. And you can use that as a stepping stone to building your business or to getting a new education or to changing your career opportunities or to changing your job opportunities, right? Investments is another one. If you already have stable income, you know, and you want to start learning about investing in stocks, real estate, etc. Those are all really great places to learn, get bought into long term investments. Also, you can do maybe you have creative projects or you want to do something online. You can do online sales. Maybe you're creative. You can make art. You can use ChatGPT. You can sell PDFs. You can make music. You can sell music online, photography, T-shirts, or you could do writing services. There's like with AI now, there's a lot of opportunities online, and just some other ideas where you could potentially explore for money creation for potential prosperity vehicles, which you can use to sort of build the foundation to ease into what it is that you're really trying to get to, or what steps you want to take following, like saving some money and then taking the next step, starting a business or whatever it may be, which also could be something like service-based work, something as simple as babysitting, freelance work, tutoring, or even coaching. And then there are some unconventional paths to prosperity, like you just marry rich. You know, if you can do it authentically and ethically and you feel good about it, you know, I mean, some people like that's all they want to do. That's up to the individual person. Each path is going to vary because it's your prosperity path, it's your prosperity vehicle. So, you know, choose what feels best for you and how you will feel like good about yourself in the long run. And, you know, just to note, not all vehicles are created equal. Something like selling drugs and starting a bakery are both not the same thing, you know, so be careful of energy, consequences, ethical considerations. You got to take all that into consideration. So choosing the right vehicle. To choose the right vehicle, you can use the following criteria. Number one, believability and achievability. Is this something you could realistically begin now? And then even more so, does your subconscious believe it's possible? Do you have limiting beliefs around this idea? So be wary of those things as well. For example, you're dreaming of being a famous director or a tech founder. You know, these dreams are valid, but if you've never made a short-term film, or you don't know how to code, your current vehicle could be just getting plugged into those arrays and creating and publishing small projects first and learning how to do those things. Empowerment and excitement. This is a really important one. And this is why I say always think about it long-term as well, because it's something that's exciting for 6 months. It might not be exciting for 5 years. So does it light you up? Is this idea, this service, or whatever it is that you're doing, job opportunities, can you see yourself doing these for long-term and still being energized and inspired down the road? For example, marrying rich may sound appealing right now, and short term it may be great, but then it might feel stifling or misaligned to you down the road because there may be control issues or things that you hadn't considered that would arrive due to the situation. Also, another one is alignment with your future goals. Does this vehicle, does this path contribute to your long-term vision? Is it a stepping stone to the identity that you want to step in? You know, if your future identity is in golf, but you're taking this prosperity vehicle that has nothing to do with golf and that's like a potato chips factory, you know, you could potentially see that they don't align, but maybe they do. You never know because the universe is a trickster. You want to keep an open mind. It's important to keep an open mind, but also work within the confines, not even confines, but work within the feelings and energetics of your own intuition, your authenticity, what feels good for you, what feels exciting, and you can see doing long term. Unless, again, like I said earlier, you see a short term you see a short-term opportunity, which then can help you pivot into a long-term goal. And that's always another way to utilize different prosperity vehicles as you move through time and space. Because as we move through time and space, we are going to change with what our tastes are, what our values are, and what is aligned for us. So keeping an opening mind, you may not yet know even what vehicles excite you until you experiment. So here's some ideas how you can approach this. You can make a list of 25 things that you love to do. And then you could choose 3 or 4 of those and do some exploration and tests around these ideas. Hash out what your life would be like. Narrowing down one is a potential money-making vehicle and putting a second and third, right on the back burner behind you if the first one doesn't work out. Often, entrepreneurs have several ideas that fail before becoming successful. So, any entrepreneur is going to tell you that, like, they were sleeping on their friend's couch, they were like deep and heavy in debt. And it's not always this way, but I tried 7 different things that failed, and then finally this one stuck. So, just keep trying. If it doesn't work the first time, you know, sometimes it takes more time and eventually it's going to stick. So choose something that you can see yourself sticking with until you make at least, say, 10 grand or something like that. Set a monetary goal and see how it feels after you get to that amount and see what you think about potentially scaling this up as a business. Or maybe I want to move to number 2 because I didn't really like this, that, and this thing about what I'm doing now. And maybe it doesn't feel as aligned as I thought it would feel now that I've tried it. As an exercise in your journal, you can write out 5 or 10 actionable ways to create your desired amount of money. And then you can select the few that excite you most and test to them. So you can commit to testing them out for like 90 days or until you hit a financial goal, which is kind of like what I was just saying. And 1 may bomb, 2 may bomb, number 3 may soar. You know, you never know. And it'll also help you discover things that you do like and that you don't like about like steps that are involved in processes when it comes to a job or a business or whatever it is that you're choosing for your prosperity path, right? Also, we should talk a little bit about avoiding resistance to receiving. Sometimes the universe presents us with opportunities for abundance, but we are subconsciously resisting them. Some examples: turning down a job because it feels beneath you, saying you shouldn't have when receiving a gift. When people give you gifts, you should always receive them gratefully and be thankful that someone gave you a gift. And it's this law of correspondence where receive, give, and open the energy to receiving, right? And the same thing for rejecting compliments or help from others. Be open to receiving just as much as you are to giving. Or something like keeping mental tabs to avoid owing anything to others. This is something that I used to do myself personally. And then we can get into a reflection prompt here. And I'm just going to kind of wrap up the last part of this lecture portion here. And we'll do some journaling, some prompts and journaling prompts and practices I have written down here for you guys. So if you want to reflect on this, let's think about where in your life are you resisting receiving? And it can be simple or it can be more complex. And if you feel somewhere, follow that string. You can always go deeper, dig deeper, because it's not often the first thing that comes to mind. Are you struggling financially but turning down jobs or help? Are you rejecting small forms of abundance? And also, are you seeing the abundance in your life already? Like, are you grateful for the things that you do have? And what sort of practice do you have to attract opportunities? How are you facilitating a bridge of incidents through moving energy, which can be seen as going out in the world and showing up? I'm going to put these journaling prompts and stuff with the video when it's posted in the Money Mastery section, but I'm also going to read them to you here now today. Use the following questions to gain clarity on your manifestation vehicle. Now, what is your financial point A? Where are you now? Are you in debt? Are you in break even? You're in the positive. Figure out where you are now. And then what is your desired point B? Where do you want to be? What is that number? And what do you think it's going to take to get to that number? And then try to decide what sort of prosperity path or prosperity vehicle feels authentic and exciting, which is what I'd kind of been talking about earlier. Think about the implications of believability and achievability and also long-term viability. Which vehicles are you currently resisting and why? And if you are resisting current vehicles, explore more around them. And I mean, I know personally, there's two ways that you can look at this. When I wanted to be a photographer and I wanted to work full-time as a photographer, I decided that I was only going to take full-time work as a photographer. I was only going to go do photography jobs. I was only going to work in this realm. And it took some time to break in, but it was through that insistence that I wanted to do that specific thing that I was able to get to that goal through pushing and saying that I'm going to do this and this is going to be specifically what I'm doing. So if you're resisting a vehicle, you want to explore more around why you're resisting that vehicle, and so dive into that as well. What 5 ways could you create your desired amount of financial return? So if you're saying you need to make 10 grand, take a list and think about 5 ways that could be prosperity paths for you to reach that amount of money. And then look at these vehicles and which of them could you commit for 90 days. 90 days is a test run. And then think about that after a 90-day assessment. Okay, could I do this for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? And take a long-term assessment and look at it and write down what you really think it's going to take to do all of these things, because it's often so much more complicated and involved than you initially think it is. And then once you start to dive into it and start to put some energy into it, you might find right away that, well, this is not going to work, or you might find that it's easier than you think it is. So it's always worth it to take time through exploration and experimentation. Be patient, be consistent. It doesn't have to be hard work, but it does have to be dedicated. You do have to be disciplined and you have to be committed. The last part here, in conclusion, in order to create effectively, we must merge the spiritual with the physical. Your vehicle is not just a tool, but it's the bridge between intention and reality. And it helps speed up the process from just solid energy to 5D with action within the 3D. The universe honors effort, alignment, and commitment. So don't get too wrapped up in assigning value when it comes to such laws like the law of equivalent exchange. Again, what you see as value might be what you see as no value might be super valuable to the universe. So just be aware that don't get limited by your beliefs when trying to swap energies or practice the law of equivalent exchange. Choose your vehicle, commit to it, and open yourself up to fully receive the abundance you're calling in. And the last thing is the affirmation I want to give you. I am open to receiving abundance. I give myself permission to align with a vehicle that supports my desires and feels authentic to me. You can say this for 5 or 10 days every day, 3 or 4 times a day. It's going to get driven into your subconscious. And that's what I have for the lecture portion. You think of these as a stepping stone to something greater. This or something better is coming for sure. That's going to be it for us today.